Imagine working every day with a smile, pouring coffee, taking orders, staying late after your shift just to make sure everything shines, only to be punished for showing kindness. This is not just about a waitress. This is about courage, compassion, and the truth that sometimes the smallest act of humanity can rewrite someone's entire life. Stay with me until the end, because what happens next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about justice, loyalty, and destiny. The diner was nothing special. Red leather booths worn down from decades of tired truckers, busy families, and lonely late-night souls. The smell of bacon and black coffee clung to the air like it had seeped into the walls. The neon sign outside flickered between open and darkness, casting an uneven glow through the rain-streaked windows. But to Sarah Chen, it was not just a diner, it was survival. Sarah was not the type to complain about her struggles. She was 28, working double shifts 6 days a week, and saving every dollar she could for her daughter Maya, who was battling a learning disability that required expensive therapy sessions. Her husband had left 2 years ago when the medical bills started piling up, claiming he could not handle the stress. That left her with one choice: work harder than anyone else, because Maya's future was non-negotiable. The manager, Mr. Henderson, was known for being strict and unforgiving. His belief was simple: serve, smile, and stay silent. No excuses, no exceptions. And if you broke that rule, you paid for it. He had fired 3 waitresses in the past month alone, each for minor infractions that barely deserved a warning. Sarah had seen good people lose their jobs for being 5 minutes late due to a sick child, or for giving a customer an extra packet of ketchup without charging for it. It was a Wednesday evening when the rain started falling harder, drumming against the windows of the diner. The dinner rush had died down, leaving only a handful of customers scattered across the worn vinyl booths. Sarah was wiping down tables, her feet aching in her worn sneakers, when a man walked in from the storm. He was not the usual type of customer. His clothes were expensive but wrinkled, as if he had been traveling for hours. His dark hair was disheveled from the rain, and his eyes carried the weight of someone who had not slept in days. He looked around the diner with an expression that was hard to read, somewhere between curiosity and exhaustion. Sarah approached him with her usual warmth, grabbing a menu from the stack by the register. The man had chosen a booth in the corner, away from the other customers, and was staring out the window at the parking lot. "Welcome to Miller's Diner," Sarah said with a genuine smile, setting the menu down in front of him. "Sorry about the weather out there. What can I get you to drink?" The man looked up at her, and for a moment, Sarah saw something in his eyes that made her pause. It was not just tiredness. It was the look of someone carrying a heavy burden, someone who had forgotten what it felt like to be treated with simple human kindness. "Just coffee, please," he said quietly. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it much recently. "Black coffee." Sarah nodded and returned with a steaming mug, noticing how his hands shook slightly as he wrapped them around the warm ceramic. She had seen that look before, in the mirror on her worst days. It was the look of someone who was barely holding it together. "Have you had a chance to look at the menu?" she asked gently, not wanting to rush him, but knowing that Mr. Henderson was watching from behind the counter. The man glanced down at the laminated pages, but didn't really seem to be reading them. "What would you recommend?" he asked, looking back up at her. Sarah studied his face for a moment. There was something about him that made her want to help, though she couldn't put a finger on what it was. Maybe it was the way he seemed so lost, or maybe it was just her natural instinct to care for people who were struggling. "Well," she said, lowering her voice slightly, "the meatloaf is really good. It comes with mashed potatoes and green beans, and it's pretty filling. But if you're looking for something lighter, the chicken soup is homemade, and the grilled cheese goes perfectly with it." The man smiled for the first time since he had walked in, and Sarah noticed how it completely changed his face. The soup and grilled cheese sounds perfect, he said. Thank you for the recommendation. As Sarah walked back to place his order, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this stranger than met the eye. She had been serving customers for 3 years now, and she had developed a sixth sense about people. This man was different. He was watching everything, taking in details that most customers would never notice. The way the other staff moved around the kitchen, how long it took to prepare orders, or how the other waitresses interacted with their tables. When she brought his food out 20 minutes later, the man was still staring out the window, but now he was also jotting notes in a small leather notebook. Sarah set the plate down carefully, making sure not to disturb whatever he was writing. Here you go. Be careful, the soup is really hot. The man closed his notebook and looked down at the food. This looks amazing, he said, and I could tell he meant it. Thank you. Sarah was about to walk away when she noticed something that made her heart sink. The man was counting out bills from his wallet, and it was clear that he barely had enough to cover the cost of his meal. She recognized the careful way he sorted through the crumpled ones and fives, the same way she had to count her own money when deciding between buying groceries or filling up her car with gas. Without thinking, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. You know what? She said, keeping her voice low so Mr. Henderson wouldn't hear. We have a special tonight. Buy any entree and get a free slice of pie. It's my favorite policy because everyone deserves something sweet at the end of a hard day. The man looked up at her with surprise, and Sarah smiled and winked. It's kind of an unwritten rule. What do you say? We have apple, cherry, and chocolate cream. For a moment, the man just stared at her, and Sarah worried that she had overstepped, but then his eyes filled with something that looked like gratitude, and he nodded slowly. Apple pie sounds wonderful, he said, quietly. Thank you. That is very kind of you. Sarah brought him the pie and refilled his coffee without being asked. As the evening wore on, she checked on him several times, making sure he had everything he needed. The man ate slowly, savoring every bite, and Sarah noticed that he seemed to relax as the meal progressed. It was nearly 9 o'clock when disaster struck. Mr. Henderson had been making his rounds, checking receipts and watching the staff like a hawk, when he noticed the discrepancy. Sarah was clearing a table when she heard her name called in a tone that made her blood run cold. Sarah, over here, now. She walked over to where Mr. Henderson was standing by the register, his face red with anger and a receipt in his hand. Want to explain this to me? He said, waving the paper in front of her face. According to this receipt, Table 7 only paid for soup and a sandwich, but I see a slice of pie on that table. Did you ring up the pie or not? Sarah felt her heart start to pound. She glanced over at the man in the corner booth who was now watching the interaction with concern. I gave him a complimentary slice, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. He seemed like he was having a hard time, and I thought, You thought? Mr. Henderson interrupted, his voice rising. You're not paid to think, Sarah. You're paid to take orders and collect money. Do you think this is a charity? The entire diner had gone quiet. The other customers were staring, and Sarah could feel her face burning with embarrassment. But she stood her ground. It was just a piece of pie. I was trying to help someone. I don't care if you were trying to feed every homeless person in the city, Mr. Henderson said coldly. You stole from this diner, and that means you're fired. Get your things and get out. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She looked around the diner at the shocked faces of the customers, at her co-workers who were trying to pretend they weren't watching, and finally, at the man in the corner booth. His face was pale, and he looked like he was about to say something, but Sarah shook her head slightly. She didn't want to make things worse for him. I understand, she said quietly, untying her apron with trembling fingers. I'm sorry for any trouble I caused. As she walked toward the back to collect her purse from her locker, she heard the man from the corner booth stand up. She paused, hoping he wasn't going to make a scene, but when she looked back, he was just laying money on the table, more money than his meal had cost. "Ma'am," he called out to her, and his voice was different now, stronger, more confident. "I want you to know that what you did tonight was not theft. It was kindness, and kindness should never be punished." Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she managed to smile at him. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means more than you know." She gathered her things quickly, wanting to get out before she completely broke down in front of everyone. As she walked toward the door, she could hear Mr. Henderson arguing with the stranger, but she didn't stop to listen. She just wanted to go home to Maya and figure out how she was going to break the news that Mommy had lost her job.
The morning sun filtered through the thin curtains of Sarah's apartment, but she had barely slept. She had spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, running through her limited options. Her savings account had exactly $347. Rent was due in 2 weeks. Maya's therapy session was scheduled for Friday, and that alone would cost $200. Sarah dragged herself out of bed at 6 in the morning, even though she had nowhere to be. Years of waking up early had trained her body to rise with the sun, whether she had a job or not. She made coffee in the small kitchen and sat at the table, circling job listings in the newspaper with a red pen, knowing that most of them would not pay enough to cover her expenses. Maya woke up an hour later, shuffling into the kitchen with Mr. Buttons tucked under her arm. Her dark hair was messy from sleep, and she rubbed her eyes as she climbed into the chair across from her mother. "Morning, Mommy," Maya said with a yawn. "Why are you home? Don't you have work?" Sarah's heart clenched. She had rehearsed this conversation in her head a dozen times during the night, but now that the moment had arrived, the words stuck in her throat. "I have the day off, sweetie," she said, forcing a smile. "How about we make pancakes for breakfast?" Maya's face lit up. Pancakes were a rare treat, usually reserved for birthdays or special occasions. "Really? Can we put chocolate chips in them?" "Absolutely," Sarah said, grateful for the distraction. They were in the middle of making breakfast when Sarah's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and saw an unknown number. Probably a telemarketer, she thought, but something made her answer it anyway. "Hello? Is this Sarah Chen?" The voice on the other end was professional, crisp, and unfamiliar. "Yes, this is she." "Miss Chen, my name is Patricia Moore, and I'm calling from the corporate office of Henderson Restaurant Group. I need to speak with you about an urgent matter regarding your employment at Miller's Diner. Would you be available to meet with us this morning at 10 o'clock? Sarah's stomach dropped. Were they calling to make sure she returned her uniform, or threaten legal action over the pie? "I'm not sure what this is about," Sarah said carefully. "Mr. Henderson already terminated my employment last night." "Yes, we are aware of that situation. That is precisely what we need to discuss with you. This is extremely important, Miss Chen. Can you meet us at the diner at 10 o'clock? Sarah looked at Maya, who was pouring chocolate chips into the pancake batter with intense concentration. "I have my daughter with me. I do not have anyone to watch her on short notice." "Please bring her," Patricia said without hesitation. "This concerns her future as well as yours. We will see you at 10 o'clock. The line went dead before Sarah could ask any more questions. She stood there, holding the phone, her mind racing. What could corporate possibly want with her? Was this some kind of elaborate way to humiliate her further? "Mommy, the pancakes are ready," Maya called out, and Sarah pushed her worries aside to focus on breakfast. At 9:45, Sarah pulled into the parking lot of Miller's Diner with Maya in the back seat. Her hands were shaking as she turned off the engine. Through the windows, she could see that something unusual was happening inside. There were people in business suits, cameras, and what looked like a small crowd gathered near the entrance. "Why are there so many people, Mommy?" Maya asked, pressing her face against the window. "I don't know, baby," Sarah admitted, "but let's go find out." As they walked toward the entrance, Sarah noticed a black SUV parked in the front row, the same one she had seen in the parking lot last night through her rain-blurred vision. Her heart started pounding harder with each step. The moment they walked through the door, the entire diner fell silent. Every eye turned to look at them. Sarah instinctively pulled Maya closer, her protective instincts kicking in. Then she saw him. The man from last night was standing in the center of the diner, but he looked completely different. His clothes were now immaculate, a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly rent. His hair was neatly combed, and his posture radiated authority and confidence. But it was still the same man, the one she had given free pie to, the one she had thought was down on his luck. Standing next to him was Mr. Henderson, who looked like he had seen a ghost. His face was pale, and for the first time since Sarah had known him, he looked genuinely afraid. "Miss Chen," Mr. Reeves said, stepping forward with a warm smile, "thank you for coming. Please, come in." Sarah held Maya's hand tightly as they walked further into the diner. She could feel dozens of eyes on them, cameras pointing in their direction, hear the whispers of confused customers and staff members. "I don't understand what is happening," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please sit down. I owe you an explanation and an apology." Sarah sat, pulling Maya onto her lap. The little girl wrapped her arms around her mother's neck, sensing the tension in the air. "My name is not what I told you last night. Well, I didn't actually tell you my name at all, which was intentional. My name is Michael Reeves, and I am the CEO and founder of Henderson Restaurant Group. I own this diner, along with 47 others across 6 states. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. The man she had given free pie to, the man she had assumed was struggling financially, was a millionaire, a billionaire probably. "I come from very humble beginnings. My mother raised me alone after my father left. She worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads. She cleaned houses during the day, waited tables at night, and took in ironing on the weekends. I watched her sacrifice everything for me, and I promised myself that if I ever became successful, I would never forget where I came from." He paused, looking directly at Sarah. "Miss Chen, what you did last night was extraordinary. You saw someone you thought was struggling, and without hesitation, you showed compassion. You were willing to pay for that pie out of your own pocket, even though I'm sure you are struggling yourself to make ends meet. You put humanity above policy, kindness above profit." Sarah's tears were streaming down her face now. She didn't know what to say, couldn't find words to express the chaos of emotions swirling inside her. Michael turned to face Mr. Henderson, and his expression hardened. "Mr. Henderson, you have managed this location for 5 years. In that time, I have received 17 formal complaints about your management style. 17 employees have quit, citing hostile environment. And last night, you fired one of the best people I have ever met in this industry for showing basic human decency." Mr. Henderson opened his mouth to speak, but Michael held up a hand. "You are terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you out, and you will receive your final paycheck by mail. This company was built on the principle that we serve people, not just food. You forgot that." 2 security guards stepped forward, and Mr. Henderson was led out of the diner without another word. Sarah watched in stunned silence as her former boss disappeared through the door. Michael turned back to Sarah. "Miss Chen, I want to offer you a job. Not as a waitress, though there is absolutely no shame in that profession. My mother was a waitress, and she was one of the strongest people I have ever known." He walked over and knelt so he was at eye level with Maya. "What's your name, sweetheart?"
Maya, the little girl said shyly, tightening her grip on her mother. Maya, your mom is a hero, Michael said gently. She helped someone she thought needed help, even though it might cost her everything. That takes real courage. He stood and addressed Sarah again. I want to offer you a position in our corporate office as Director of Employee Relations and Community Outreach. Your job would be to help create programs that support our employees, ensure they are treated with dignity and respect, and establish initiatives to help struggling families in the communities where we operate. The starting salary is $85,000 a year, plus full benefits including health insurance, retirement contributions, and an education fund. Sarah could not breathe. She must be dreaming. This could not be real. $85,000? She currently made $22,000 a year with tips. Health insurance? She had been without coverage for 2 years. I do not have a college degree, she whispered. I dropped out to take care of my daughter. You have something more valuable than a degree, Michael said. You have compassion, integrity, and real-world experience. You know what it is like to struggle, to work multiple jobs, to choose between paying rent and buying medicine. That is the perspective I need in my company. We will provide any additional training you might need. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. This is your official offer letter, along with a signing bonus of $10,000 to help you get settled. The position starts Monday if you accept. Sarah took the envelope with shaking hands. $10,000. She could pay rent for months. She could afford Maya's therapy. She could buy groceries without counting every penny. There's one more thing, Michael said, and now he was smiling. I spoke with Maya's therapy clinic this morning. Henderson Restaurant Group would like to establish a scholarship fund in your name to help children who need therapeutic services but whose families cannot afford them. Maya's therapy will be fully covered from now on, and we will help at least 50 other children each year. That was when Sarah completely broke down. Huge, gasping sobs shook her body as years of stress, fear, and exhaustion poured out. Maya hugged her tightly, and Sarah could feel her daughter's small body trembling against her own. "It's okay, Mommy. Do not cry." But these were not sad tears. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of overwhelming joy. Sarah looked up at Michael through blurred vision. "Why?" she managed to ask. "Why are you doing this?" Michael's eyes glistened. Because 30 years ago, a waitress at a diner saw my mother crying over a bill she couldn't pay. That waitress paid for our meal, slipped my mother $50, and told her that things would get better. That $50 kept the lights on in our apartment for another month. It gave my mother hope when she had none left. She never forgot that kindness, and neither did I. He looked around the diner at the cameras, at the employees, at the customers who were openly weeping. Sometimes we forget that businesses are not just about profit margins and quarterly reports. They're about people with real struggles, real dreams, and real lives. You reminded me of that last night, Sarah. You reminded everyone here of what truly matters. The diner erupted in applause. Customers stood, employees cheered, and cameras captured every moment. Sarah felt Maya squeeze her hand. "Does this mean you don't have to work at night anymore, Mommy?" Maya asked hopefully. Sarah laughed through her tears. "Yes, baby. I'll be home for dinner every night." Patricia Moore, the woman who had called that morning, stepped forward with a warm smile. "Sarah, I will be your supervisor in the corporate office. I've been with this company for 15 years, and I can honestly say that Michael has never done anything like this before. You must have really made an impact on him." Sarah looked at Michael, who was now talking to reporters, explaining his undercover program and his commitment to treating employees with dignity. She thought about her mother, who had passed away before Maya was born, and wished she could share this moment with her. "I want to say something," Sarah said, standing up with Maya still in her arms. The room quieted again, and all eyes turned to her. Sarah felt nervous, but she knew she had to speak from her heart. "I did not give that pie away to get a reward,"
she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I did it because it was the right thing to do. We have all been in situations where we needed help, where we were struggling, where a small act of kindness made all the difference. I believe that we are supposed to help each other. That's what makes us human." She looked at the other employees gathered around. "I know what it is like to work 2 jobs and still not have enough. I know what it is like to skip meals so your child can eat. I know what it is like to lie awake at night wondering how you're going to survive another month. And I promise you, in this new role, I will fight for every single employee in this company to be treated with respect and paid fairly." The applause that followed was thunderous. Maya clapped too, even though she didn't fully understand what was happening. All she knew was that her mommy was happy, truly happy, for the first time in as long as she could remember. As the crowd began to disperse and the cameras were packed away, Michael approached Sarah one last time. "There's a corporate orientation on Monday morning at 9. Patricia will send you all the details. Take the weekend to process everything, spend time with your daughter, and get ready for your new life." He handed her a business card. "This is my direct line. If you need anything, and I mean anything, you call me. You gave me hope last night, Sarah. You reminded me why I started this company in the first place. For that, I will be forever grateful." Sarah looked down at the card, then at the envelope containing her offer letter and signing bonus. This morning, she had woken up with $347 and no job. Now, she had a career, financial security, and the ability to help other people the way she had been helped. As she walked out of the diner with Maya's hand in hers, Sarah turned back one last time. The sun was shining through the windows, illuminating the red leather booths and creating patterns on the old tile floor. This place had been her prison for 3 years, but it had also led her to this moment. "Goodbye, old life, and thank you," she whispered. Maya tugged on her hand. "Can we get ice cream to celebrate, Mommy?" Sarah laughed, a genuine, joyous sound that felt foreign after so long. "Yes, baby, we can get all the ice cream you want." As they drove away, Sarah caught a glimpse of Michael through the rearview mirror, standing in the doorway of the diner, watching them leave. He raised his hand in a wave, and she waved back. The story of the waitress who was fired for kindness spread across the internet within hours. News outlets picked it up. Social media exploded with support. Thousands of people shared their own stories of struggling to make ends meet, of being punished for showing compassion, of desperately needing someone to recognize their humanity. But for Sarah, the most important part of the story was not the dramatic reveal or the job offer or even the money. It was the moment that evening when she tucked Maya into bed and her daughter looked up at her with those big brown eyes and said, "Mommy, you are a superhero." "Why do you say that, sweetie?" Sarah asked, brushing hair from Maya's forehead. "Because you help people even when it's hard. That's what superheroes do." Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead and turned out the light. As she walked to her own room, she thought about Michael's words, about his mother, about the waitress who had helped them 30 years ago. She thought about the chain of kindness that had led to this moment, about how one small act could ripple forward through time and change lives in ways we can never predict. She pulled out her phone and looked at the scholarship fund announcement that Patricia had sent her. 50 children every year would get the help they needed because Sarah had chosen compassion over policy. 50 families would not have to choose between therapy and groceries. 50 kids, like Maya, would have a chance at a better future. Sometimes the world punishes you for being kind. Sometimes it fires you for showing humanity. But sometimes, just sometimes, that punishment becomes the doorway to your destiny. Sometimes losing everything leads you to find everything you never knew you needed. Sarah Chen had walked into work yesterday as a struggling single mother, barely surviving. She had lost her job for giving away a piece of pie worth $3. And 24 hours later, she had become a director at a major corporation with the power to change policies and help thousands of people. As she drifted off to sleep that night, Sarah smiled. Tomorrow was Monday. Tomorrow, her new life would begin, and she couldn't wait to see what she could accomplish when kindness was not just allowed, but celebrated. The last thing she thought before sleep claimed her was a simple truth that she would carry with her forever. The smallest act of humanity can rewrite someone's entire life. You just have to be brave enough to care.